Welcome to another episode of the Business of AI podcast. And I'm joined this morning by Graeme King from Amino Data. And I'm really looking forward to exploring a few areas around data and what that means for businesses trying to get ahead in AI. So, Graeme, welcome to the Business of AI podcast.
That's great. Thanks very much, Tim. Really real pleasure to be here and talk all things data and AI.
Yeah. We've given ourselves quite a broad topic there, I think, haven't we? But I'm looking forward to getting into it. Could we start off by maybe sort of hearing a little bit about your background? How did you get into what you're doing today? And tell us a bit more about Amino as well.
Certainly, yeah. So I'm currently VP of Data and AI Governance at Amino Data. I've been with Amino for about 2 years. And Amino really are an organization that is focused on data management, but ultimately what we're helping organizations do is get AI-ready data. Because there's so much in that topic, and I know we'll probably have some conversations about more in depth as we go forward. My background is I've come into AI governance from data governance. So I've been working in data governance for about 15 or 20 years, but through a variety of industries and a variety of roles, a project manager, program director. I've always dealt with data in some way, shape or form, generally around either way back at the beginning of my career with Railtrack and the year 2000 projects, when we're trying to make sure that all the railways kept on running, which was finding out about data, about what kit they held, and all the way through, as I say, various industries, including criminal justice, defence, local government, central government, and even a stint of about 18 months working with the European Space Agency. So it just goes to show that data and how you manage that, how you govern that, really is applicable to every facet of every industry right now.
Yeah, and it's so fundamental to what we do in the AI industry. But yes. I think that it's often something that people don't really realize, well, I suppose, how important it is or where it is in the organization and kind of who owns it. But I think, another area is also the skills that are required in order to understand how to apply data. And I talk in schools quite a bit. Both the students and the teachers will often not really recognize the importance of what data is. And, what's your perspective? How do you see the skills? What are the skills which are really important to understand data fundamentally?
There's a lot, but I think that the realization is that everybody at whatever stage in their career, wherever they are, works with data day in, day out. They might not think they do, but they absolutely do. And I think that being able to get people in that kind of mindset of, yes, your day job is marketing or sales or whatever it might be, but actually you are working off data. So the calls that you're making, the documents that you're reading, it's all data. And I think to get people from a skills perspective to understand that everybody has a part to play in how that data is held, what they do with that data, and that realization of how powerful it is. In terms of skills in sort of schools, etc., I think we should be teaching very much data literacy. I think we should be teaching AI literacy as well. And I know there's been computer studies and various things for a number of years, all of which is really good. But I think that with the way that the world is turning, and especially with AI and what that promises, the ability to get people right from a school age to understand, yes, AI is fantastic. Absolutely. It has so many positives. But with great power comes great responsibility. And I don't think there's ever a time that's too early to start guiding people through that journey of absolutely use this as a tool set, make the most of it, but understand what it actually consists of, which is ultimately data and how we handle that.
Yeah, no, you put it very well. And I think that's something that we've been campaigning for as well, in terms of that broader approach to what AI skills are. It's not just the technical skills, those are important, but it's the everyday confidence to be able to play around with and use broader different types of AI. And also it's that earlier approach, just getting it into the curriculum earlier, not just seeing it as computer science, but being part of all multidisciplinary areas. So You talked about AI ready data, and I wanted to sort of
Yes.
unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by AI ready data? And I'm conscious also, I wanted to pick up on some of you mentioned some of those big infrastructure projects, huge data projects. I'd imagine there were massive challenges there about getting consistency and interoperability. So is that part of what you mean by AI ready data?
100%. So AI ready data, we're talking about AI ready data now, but I couldn't say right now that AI ready data equals X. What it does mean is that having the data ready for the particular use cases that you as an organization have for AI. And that consists of a number of things, which is why the kind of data governance has led naturally into AI governance, because we're talking about things like the information and the data architecture, the foundations, the data context, all the semantics, data quality, observability, all of the things that everybody's heard. But the reality is actually how to make that and how to understand what that data actually means. Within the pharma industry, there's the concept of FAIR data, which is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I think that encapsulates what AI-ready data is. I think it's a really good way of looking at data being prepared for AI. So that's one I like to use that quite a lot because it does neatly encapsulate it. But ultimately,
Remind me that again? So I missed the F.
Findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I think that's a really good model to use. But yes, I think from AI ready data is absolutely all of those things, but apply it to the use cases that you have. You don't have to go and to use the phrase boil the ocean, eat the elephant, however you want to, whichever metaphor you prefer. But you can actually do this, on a case by case basis. As ever, my career's sort of spans 25 odd years, and as ever, as more technology advances, you always look back at certain projects and go, "Oh my goodness, if we'd had this then, that would have made so much difference." And when I started in the data industry, as I said, way back in about 98, then interoperable wasn't really a thing. That yes, we had data, but actually in that particular example, that data was being held by a third-party company, and we had to then not only try and get it, find out where it was. So there's your findable, but it wasn't very accessible. To the point that we ended up actually walking the track, literally walking the track to find out what bits of kit were where. So, and yes, we were using a CMDB type application, but yes, if you tie it all back to what's happening now and look back, it wasn't findable, wasn't accessible, certainly wasn't reusable. So, it really has changed. The mindset has changed quite a bit. I still think that we are facing a number of the same problems. So there's a phrase that I use: AI is the new panacea, but we're still facing the old challenges, and that those old challenges generally come down to data. Where is it? Is it good enough? Can we use it? Should we use it? Etc.
Yeah, I think some of those challenges are pretty well established in large organizations as well, right? I mean,
yes.
Legacy is one of those words that you hear so much, whether it be legacy data or legacy databases or legacy systems. There's a lot of these kind of mismatching, very non-interoperable. And the challenge, I suppose, is how do you bring all those together? I've seen the emergence in the last year or so, maybe less than that, of companies who are now saying, well, we can actually use AI-powered tools to go out and to analyze all of the different data sets, clean it up, and effectively sort of almost refactor it, I suppose, into a new data set based upon the old data. What's your view on that? Is it still early days? Is it delivering the sort of the quality output that you think is this AI-ready data yet, or do we have some steps to go?
I think we're at a very interesting point with that, because I think there are a number of tools on the market that do, exactly that. They use AI to help you get your data ready. So you're using AI to get your data AI ready, which probably seems like a misnomer, but actually the reality is it's like every other use of AI. As long as you know what it's doing and why it's doing it, use the tools to help you get that data ready for another use case. And then you can build on that. But I think there is a risk that we use too much and don't understand what the data actually is. If we leave it, you still have to understand what there is. You still have to understand what regulations, for example, what compliance, what legal EU AI Act is a prime example, that your risk factor could be increased, exacerbated by using that data. So I think, yes, absolutely use the tool sets, use AI to help get data ready, but as ever, currently where we are, make sure there's human in the loop. Have that review to understand what's actually happening with that data itself. But yes, absolutely. I was speaking on a panel last night, and one of the questions was, how do we get ready for the next thing? AI's come along. The next thing is probably agentic or further uses of AI or the next bit. How do we get ready for that? For me, the answer's simple. Whatever that next thing is going to be, it's going to need data. So start now, get ahead of the game, understand where your data is and how you can use it, and what tools you can use to get it ready for whatever that next use case is.
And it's something that comes up quite a bit in the podcast when we talk to businesses around how they're driving AI transformation. One of the main problems is that they'll often get this top-down command from the chairman or the board or whoever it is saying, we want AI, because they see the competitors have it and they want the organization to suddenly adopt AI with very little understanding of actually what's required. And there's pressure put upon the team then to go and adopt something that looks sexy and is on the website and it's a chatbot, 90% of the time. That's actually not, it's a solution looking for the problem rather than actually addressing the specific business needs. And actually what we hear then is that the people who go out there and actually would have answered that question if it had been framed, they say actually often start with the data, because that's one of the biggest problems. And it's to your point, to get it into that state where you can actually start to use it. So it comes back to this kind of education thing, I think, again, doesn't it? It's trying to educate the entire organization to frame the problem properly and then to look for the areas which are going to add the most value, which is often data, it's often the processes, it's often the workflows. And I know you've been looking at the sort of operating models as well, and how to optimize that flow. So what advice would you have for some of those organizations who are struggling with the complexity of all of these different layers? How do you build a sort of operating model to be able to drive that transformation?
I think it's important to realize that AI has turned a lot of things on its head, potentially society, the way we work, et cetera, et cetera. And that absolutely goes for operations. It absolutely goes for operating models as well. And it absolutely goes for things like governance. So tying that governance aspect into how you operate, there's a flip side of you have to be able to govern quickly. And actually, I'm going to say something that I've said before that occasionally make people go, oof, is that I don't want to talk about data and AI governance. Nobody wants to be governed. I do want to talk about data and AI excellence because everybody wants to be excellent. And in terms of how things need to change, or how organizations look and what those operating models can be, it's don't be afraid to make those changes, but be conscious of the speed at which it's being done, and really a pragmatism around how these things are going to operate. So bringing it back to some of the governance aspects, I've been doing this for a long time. I know very well that every time I used to say, I'm in data governance, people go, you could see their eyes roll in the back of their head. No, right, okay, it's one of these guys. Let's just humour him. But now that has changed because people know and organizations know that they need the data to be able to get the AI side of things. And the reality is that the success of your sexy new AI tool is actually going to be on that iceberg principle. It's under the water. It's the non-sexy stuff that makes it really work. It's the data. It's how people work. It's the processes. It's all of the things that help surface that data in order to use it within those AI tool sets. So in terms of operating models and how people, looking at this intractable potential problem within an organization, is start small. Build it on a use case by use case basis. I'm a big proponent now of something that we're calling just-in-time governance, which is you don't have to go on a big monolithic governance, an enterprise governance track now for AI, because quite frankly, by the time you've got that in, your competitors will have overtaken you. So you need to be able to govern at the speed of innovation. And what that means is leverage what's already there. So if you've got a data governance program, if you've got a risk and compliance program, you don't have to start from scratch. Leverage the best bits from those aspects, recognizing that AI is obviously a lot wider. It's not just the data, but it's even to questions such as, should we even be doing it? Can we do it? Should we be doing it? But when you have your use cases, build on that. Have enough guardrails in place so that you can innovate, but you can innovate safely. There used to be the phrase of fail fast. I think it's failing fast is still an option, but you have to fail safely. Make sure that if you're innovating, if something goes wrong, it's in a sandbox before it gets out to production. And that those changes around that operating model, I think, by and large, aside from titles of chief AI officer and who's going to be accountable for the AI, within an organization, all of which are very important. It's that mindset shift of, we have to get going. We have to be able to find our way through this, but without losing speed to competitors.
Yeah, there was so much value in that last section you gave there. So many kind of great ideas that I was kind of scribbling to write down. I love this concept of moving from regulation and governance as something which is restrictive to something which is actually setting excellence and standards. And I think it's a really important shift, because often when you're particularly in fast growth businesses, you don't have the time to think about regulation. That's a classic thing you hear. It's like, I don't have time to learn about the EU AI Act. It's like, well, yeah, it's quite important, but that's something you hear. But actually, if you phrase it as, how can we make our organization excellent? How can we make our data really powerful so that it's AI ready, so they can achieve all these incredible things? It goes from a very negative to a very positive. So I love that concept you were talking about moving towards excellence. Also, the just-in-time concept, I think that's genius as well, because that, again, is one of those challenges that businesses often will have, is that they look at these areas, governance, and it's huge. And you try and start reading the EU AI Act or any sort of piece of data legislation, and it's immense. And yes, you can put it into ChatGPT and ask it all the relevant questions, but actually what you're suggesting is just that iterative process of starting small and figuring out a few tests, which is really great. But I wanted to kind of come back to the point you raised around the sort of safety and the security aspect there, because I know you work quite a lot in health, with health data, and you mentioned sandboxes as well. Now, some of the conversations I've had with people in the health sector are, in most areas, having a 98% success rate is fantastic. But actually in the health sector, it means that there's a 2% risk of something really bad happening, and that actually impacts upon people's lives, literally.
Yes.
So they have a very different threshold for risk. And I wanted to get your sort of insights into how do you still drive innovation within that different environment where there are very different outcomes and very different risk thresholds?
The risk factor is a key one for everything, for all the use cases I've looked at in different industries and with different organizations. The key thing is, what is the organization's or the industry's risk appetite as a whole, because that drives, and if that sets you in motion, and that really determines how you're going to approach that. Absolutely, with healthcare data, 2% is, you have to be as right as you can. Now, we also have to recognize that even without AI, unfortunately, and this is absolutely no slight on anybody, but unfortunately, mistakes still exist. They are not coming about just because of the AI. That said, we know that humans are fallible. We know that AI can be fallible as well. So it's making sure that if you are going to test something, put it in a sandbox. Be very clear about what your success criteria are, and to understand what actually makes that. So if you're writing a model, or you're doing an element of UK, understand what's your intent. How is that going to look at what happens if it goes well? What happens if it goes wrong? And really, in that healthcare kind of area, you have to, obviously human in the loop is absolutely critical, because you can then use, yes, humans are fallible, AI is fallible, but actually, if the AI is doing quite a lot of the work, then that takes a bit of stress off the human in the loop, and therefore they are less fallible. I think, if that makes sense. So you make sure that you've got that mesh between using the AI to help, but also having somebody with real experience looking at it to help make those decisions. But I think that's all very well in pilot and very, very well in proof of concept. I think you'll have seen this as well, but especially in healthcare, we've got to be very careful about them moving from pilot to production. It can be a huge gulf, and whatever you're seeing in that sandbox and whatever you're seeing in your proof of concept, be very, very aware of what that scales out to be.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the government launch the AI Growth Lab as that's the program to build a sandbox for data that could be used, particularly health data. I think it's modelled on the great work which has been done in the FCA sandboxes there, again, operating with a sandbox to allow companies to come in and test things out within the regulations without actually impacting upon the world financial system, which is often good to kind of isolate those two things out. So I think sandboxes are the way forward. But do you have any sort of sense of how companies can best use those sandboxes? And I think the other bit, which I'm curious whether you've picked up on, is whether we're starting to see companies, innovators in the AI space, getting access to some of that health data that the government's talked about. That vast NHS data set, that it's now in a federated data platform. Are those two things coming together? Are you seeing companies getting access to that to start innovating?
I think they are coming together, but they're coming together quite slowly. There is still very much, I'll use the word fear, but I don't quite mean it like that, around, sharing data and how we actually use it, especially, such sensitive data as health data. Now, obviously, in sandboxes, we can anonymize and do all those good things. So there are aspects of that coming. I don't personally know at the moment of any organizations that have been able to access that sandbox, but that's not to say it's not happening. I just haven't, any of the clients I work with haven't used it yet. But I think it's a very good way forward. I think that health data, you've been able to sandbox that, use AI, etc. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think there's a wider question of how much we could really help to improve society by sharing some of that data and combining it. But I know that could be somewhat ideological. But, if you've got schools data, police data, health data, social care data, you can start to glean a lot. Now, obviously, in doing that, you have to be exceptionally careful, especially with the EU AI Act and what it could mean from that point of view. But again, why not use sandboxes to at least test that out? But I think health data is a really key part of that. As I say, I don't know of any organizations currently that I'm working with that have had access to it, but the impression that I'm getting from the reading and the anecdotal evidence I'm seeing is that is starting to come together, but slowly. And I think we need to accelerate that.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting space, and I think you touched upon a couple of other fascinating areas, which is the sort of growing recognition that data is extremely valuable.
Yes.
And that recognition within government, local government, public sector, particularly NHS, that actually this data that they have can actually have a value. And they're also within government. We're talking to great people now who've been recruited in, who understand the value of data and why it needs to be brought together. The sort of the other trend that I wanted to ask you about was the creation of synthetic data.
Yes.
And digital twins, because we're seeing that as kind of quite an emerging area. A few companies, we've had a couple on the podcast now who actually sort of talk around how they create those digital twins, and they're a lot people are a lot less worried about what happens to their digital twin or to synthetic data. Is that something which you think is a solution long term, or is it almost just a kind of like until we figure out how to bring that data together and get access to it?
Well, I think it's actually a bit of both. So I'm going to haver right in the middle. So when I first came across digital twins as a concept, it was actually in the oil and gas industry of digital twinning rigs, etc. So you can do things without sending people out to the rigs. And that worked quite well. As a concept, that worked well in that they were able to sort things out from shore rather than having to fly people out to the rigs. So as a concept, that's where I first came across it. I think now digital twins, especially within pharma and with AI powered drug development, which a lot of the organizations are actively moving towards, then that really that absolutely helps. Digital twins absolutely help. And why not use virtual the twins in the virtual world, if you like, to help positive impacts in the real world. In terms of synthetic data, I think it absolutely has its uses, 100%, because it can be used for with your testing and various other things where you can start to fill in some of those gaps. I would urge caution, as always, just to make sure that synthetic data is actually representative and you're not taking it into a situation or a use case where you need the real data all the time. So I think it absolutely has its place. Is it long term? I suspect it's here to stay because it absolutely does have its uses. But as everything, I'm trying to tread that cautious path with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Great. Well, there's so many areas of data that I'd love to quiz you about. You've got such expertise there, but I think we're going to have to start to kind of wrap things up a little bit. But I wanted to just ask, as we start to kind of wrap things up, about what's your advice to any companies, maybe even researchers or kind of young researchers who are thinking about getting into the data space? Are there particular areas that you are seeing that are fast emerging, that are really hot right now, that you kind of wish, actually, if I was starting my career again, I'd go into that space within data?
Yeah, I think absolutely. But I think there's, again, note of caution. Data roles are changing, and data roles are going to change increasingly as we go forward. So yes, I would absolutely encourage people to get into the data industry, but I would encourage them to do it whilst looking with an AI lens. And what I mean by that is that, the days of getting into data and analyzing the data and, data stewards, data owners, what that actually means, and, that whilst that's not disappearing, it is morphing into something else and will increasingly do so over the next 5 years. So for people that are wanting to get into AI, don't be afraid to be at the unsexy end of AI, because it's actually that's going to make your AI work. So yes, absolutely, come into the data industry, be aware, be very AI literate, be data literate as well, obviously, but be very AI literate of understanding where that eternal loop is of where AI can help with the data and data can help with the AI. And I think people that can come in with that view now, they will get, that they will move very fast in their careers.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. And then, so last question, how can we stay in touch with Amino Data, and what are the big exciting projects you're working on now that you can leave us with?
So we're doing work with farmers at the moment, helping get their data ready for AI powered drug development. There's work we're doing in a number of areas there. We're starting out on a products stream as well, which is new for us. But yes, to find out more about Amino, then our website is www.amino-data.com. And yeah, please go there and have a look at what we do, and feel free to get in touch.
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much. We've covered a whole range of areas of data in quite a short period of time. So I'm really grateful to you to bringing it to life in such a great way. I think the one of the big takeaways for me early on was that concept of setting standards and setting excellence, and seeing governance of data in that lens rather than seeing it as a burden or something which is being restrictive. I think that was a really smart idea. I really like the concept you threw out there as well of just-in-time governance rather than trying to sort of do everything, actually, so breaking it down into some bite-sized chunks. And yeah, it was really good to get your take on how to start to build those data foundations, getting AI ready data, and the role of the human in the loop, which I think is critical to all of this. That was one of the phrases that came up quite a lot, which I think also kind of lends itself back to some of the things we talked about early on, right? And at the end, in terms of what does this industry look like? How has it changed? And it's still a human needed to interpret the data, because even though there's vast amounts of data out there, the machines are good at processing it and helping us do that. But the analysis and the application of that data, and I suppose fundamentally the ability to turn that into a business or apply to business needs, that's where humans come in.
So, absolutely. Yeah. And make sure that applying the context as well. The context around the data is absolutely everything.
Context. Absolutely. Yeah. Good way to end on that.
Yes.
So Graeme, thank you so much for joining us today on the Business of AI podcast. It's been great to chat to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tim.